The branches of Burkina Faso's military include its army, air force, national gendarmerie, national police, and people's militia. Being a landlocked country, Burkina Faso has no navy. In 1966, a military coup deposed the first president of Upper Volta, Maurice Yaméogo, suspended the constitution, dissolved the National Assembly, and placed Lieutenant Colonel Sangoulé Lamizana at the head of a government of senior army officers. The army remained in power for 4 years. On June 14, 1970, the Voltans ratified a new constitution that established a 4-year transition period toward complete civilian rule. Lamizana remained in power throughout the 1970s as president of military, a mixed civil-military governments. After conflict over the 1970 constitution, a new constitution was written and approved in 1977, and Lamizana was re-elected by open elections in 1978. Lamizana's government faced problems with the country's traditionally powerful trade unions, and on November 25, 1980, Colonel Sangoulé overthrew President Lamizana in a bloodless coup. Colonel Sangoulé established the Military Committee of Recovery for National Progress as the supreme governmental authority, thus eradicating the 1977 constitution. Colonel Sangoulé also encountered resistance from trade unions and was overthrown 2 years later on November 7, 1982, by Major Drive Jean-Baptiste Ouédraogo and the Council of Popular Salvation. The CSP continued to ban political parties and organizations, yet promised a transition to civilian rule and a new constitution. Factional infighting developed between moderates in the CSP and radicals led by Captain Thomas Sankara, who was appointed Prime Minister in January 1983. The internal political struggle and Sankara's leftist rhetoric led to his arrest and subsequent efforts to bring about his release, directed by Captain Blaise Compaoré. This release effort resulted in yet another military coup d'etat on August 4, 1983. Compaoré came to power in a 1987 coup that led to the death of Sankara. On February 15, 2011, soldiers mutinied in Ouagadougou over unpaid housing allowances. On April 18, 2011, it was reported that the mutiny had spread to Kaya after demonstrations in Po and Tenkadago. On April 29, 2011, the army said the mutiny would end after Compaoré promised to improve the military's housing, clothing and food allowances, though there were later protests by soldiers. After a coup by members of the Regiment of Presidential Security on September 16, 2015, army units marched on Ouagadougou to oppose the coup, resulting in the restoration of Burkina Faso's transitional government on September 23, 2015. Ground forces. The Army of Burkina Faso is a skeletonized force structure of some 5,800–6,000 officers and men, augmented by a conscript force, a people's militia of some 45,000 men and women. Unlike the police and security forces, the army and the people's militia are organized along Soviet, Chinese models and precepts. The army is equipped with light-wheeled armored cars, some mounting cannon. The IISS estimated in 2011-12 that Burkina Faso had 6,400 personnel in the army d'État in 3 military regions, 1 tank battalion, 5 infantry regiments that may be under strength, and an airborne regiment. Artillery and engineer battalions are also listed. In recent years, the United States has begun providing military assistance and training to Burkina Faso's ground forces. It has trained 3 750-man battalions for peace support operations in Darfur. During a recent UN inspection, Department of Defense evaluation team found Burkina's Lafi battalion fit to deploy to Sudan, using a small Department of Defense international military education and training budget. The U.S. Embassy has established English language courses at a LAT military base, and has brought LAT officers to attend officer basic training courses in the U.S. The government of Burkina Faso has also accepted additional U.S. training assistance in counter-terrorism tactics and humanitarian assistance. Burkina Faso has recently become a member of the Trans-Sahara Counter-Terrorism Partnership. Equipment trucks ACM-80, armored vehicles E9 Cascavel, M8 Greyhound, Ferret armored car, Panhard AML, Panhard M3, Eland 90, Gila APCs, artillery systems APRA 40 122 mm MRL, Type 63 multiple rocket launcher 107 mm MRL, M101 howitzer 105 mm howitzer, anti-aircraft warfare Strela 310, Strela 220, small arms AK-47, SIG SG-540, Heckler & Amp Koch G3, FN Mag, M2 Browning, Walther PP, RPG-7, Air Force. The Air Force was founded in 1964 as the Escadrille de la République de Haute Volta at the Republic of Upper Volta Air Squadron, a subordinate unit of the Army. That year, a transient air support base was created with the assistance of the French Air Force. After acquiring an initial fleet of utility and transport aircraft, the squadron was attached to an inter-army support regiment. In 1970, the escadrille was renamed the Force Aérienne de Haute Volta, or FAHV, and in 1977 became an autonomous force. In October 1985, the Force Aérienne de Burkina Faso, or FABF, was officially inaugurated. The EHV was initially formed with 2 Douglas C-47 Skytrain and 3 MH-1521M Broussard aircraft. These were later followed by 2 Alouette 3 SAR 316B helicopters, used mostly for liaison purposes, 1 twin-engined Aero Commander 500 light utility aircraft, 2 Hawker Siddeley HS-748-2 a twin-turboprop transport aircraft, and 2 Nord 262 twin-turboprop transport aircraft. 2 escadrilles as subformations were created, the Escadrille de Transport and the Escadrille d'Hélicoptères. Later, the Escadrille d'Entraînement was added. All squadrons were initially based at Ouagadougou. In mid-1984, Libyan military aid brought 8 Miko Yangurovich MiG-21 jet fighters, along with 2 MiG-21U combat trainer versions. These ex-Libyan Air Force MiG-21 fishbed fighters were based in Ouagadougou, although they were actually operated by the Libyan Air Force on loan by Libya and were removed in 1985 without seeing combat. A single MiG-17F Fresco that was also operated by the FABF did see combat service in the Agarka Strip War in 1985–86. In 1985, the FABF also acquired 2 ex-Soviet Mi-4 transport helicopters from an unknown supplier, followed by an additional 2 Mi-4s. The Mi-4s were operated by the FABF until the late 1980s, when they were taken out of service. 5 Mi-8 17th transport helicopters were later added to the Escadrille d'Hélicoptères. While supervising the ceasefire after the Agarka Strip War, an FABF SAR 316B Alouette 3 crashed at Kouni on 14 January 1986, leaving only 1 SAR 316B still in service with the Escadrille d'Hélicoptères. In 1986, the FABF formed a new unit, the Escadrille de Chasse, in mid-1986 Philippine Air Force SF-260WP Warrior armed trainers. Light strike aircraft were acquired from a dealer in Belgium, which offered the FABF a much simpler and less expensive alternative in tactical air support to the expensive MiGs. The Warriors were not only used for pilot training, but also as light strike aircraft, and a number of them were employed by the FABF's Escadrille de Chasse. 4 additional SF-260WPs were subsequently bought directly from Italy. The 6X Philippine SF-260WP aircraft were taken out of service in 1993 and returned to the previous owner, although the 4 newly built SF-260WP aircraft were retained in service and stationed at Bobo Dioulasso Air Base. Most of the other light aircraft acquired by the FABF in the 1970s and 1980s have also now been retired along with the Mi-4 helicopters, but some recent acquisitions have been made, including of Beechcraft King Air, a Piper PA-34 Seneca, a CEAPR Robin light training aircraft, and a single air tractor at 802 aerial sprayer aircraft for spraying insecticides, purchased after the northern part of the country suffered heavy crop damage from a 2004 invasion of swarming locusts. In 2009, 2 Xenon gyroplane autogyros were purchased for use by police and security forces. In late 2005, the FABF acquired 2 Mi-35 Hind attack helicopters from Russia in apparent response by moves by neighboring Ivory Coast to bolster its own air attack capabilities during the Ivorian Civil War. Aircraft